I just think it kind of adds a bit of fun, but I also think I just like that idea of, in all of us, there's that hidden, if you
Yes.
have the courage to sort of stop and to think and to just really think about how you feel or whatever, or have the courage to go after what you want, that key is there. It's just a matter of whether you've got the courage to grab it and use it, and yeah, so I thought, oh, hide a little key.
So it's good evening there in Victoria.
Yes, 8 o'clock. Yes, summer. So we've still got daylight. Not
Oh,
too bad at the
wonderful.
moment.
So I see you live in Chelsea in Victoria.
Yes, we're lucky. We're lucky right by the beach here too. So very lucky. You realize when you travel how lucky we are actually.
And I had a sort of a look on your Instagram. You've got such a beautiful garden as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I love gardening. I really love gardening. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm
And do
quite
you
a big.
get your inspiration there?
I do. I do. I think it's more just the calming feeling of the garden as well. Kind of helps me just turn off and just to be outside in the quiet. Um, I find that side of it really helps me as much as the garden itself, the flowers and
Mm.
getting your hands in the dirt. But I think more from yeah, just calm out there.
Just being in nature.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's it.
But I love your work. I love your paintings. And this latest series that you did, or I don't know if you're still busy with it, but when one door closes, another one opens. I absolutely love the concept, the idea. It sort of relates, so relatable. And I look at the paintings and I think, yes, wow, it makes you can, you can sense that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad that that's coming through because when I'm painting them, sometimes I think, well, I get it, but will anyone else
Yeah.
get it?
I think this is something about art, isn't it? That I sometimes, when I listen to a song, when I'm on Instagram, I listen to a song and I then speak to the artist and say, oh, really, your song? Because sometimes the lyrics of the song really, resonate with me. And I think, oh, I want to talk to this person. And when I then say, your music really touched me, then also this is this reaction of, oh, I'm so glad about that. But I do think, when it comes from that place, that real realness, almost that authenticity, then it's bound to touch somebody.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I've had that experience as well, both with music. Yeah, you'll hear a song and immediately transports you back somewhere or to a memory or something like that. And I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Mm. And tell me your art, how long have you been painting?
Oh, Petra, I first realized that I wanted to paint when I was 5. I can even remember the day, to be
Really?
honest. Yeah, my grandparents have a holiday. They had a caravan down on the seaside in a place called Rosebud, and we used to go down there. And I was walking back up off the beach with Dad, and as we were coming back to the caravan, there was a man there. He's an elderly gentleman, or an older gentleman, and he was teaching probably 2 10-year-olds how to paint a sunset. And we just were stopped to watch, and I just remember just knowing right then that I really wanted to paint, and Dad's dragging me away, sort of, leave the poor man alone. Sort of thing. Come on. Yeah, so it kind of was with me from then, and during probably from the age of 5 to 10, I really got stuck into it. I was painting all the time, and my grandfather took pity on me and bought me a little oil paint set with the little mini tubes and all of that. And we didn't have a lot of money back then, so I remember finding some fence paling in the backyard, and I made my own easel out of that, and I got relegated to the laundry to paint because I was driving mum and dad crazy with the smell of turps throughout the house. So I was banned. I had to paint in the laundry. Yeah, so I sort of went full on into it from an early age. Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say you saw the painting, the person painting a sunset. I spoke to Alec Bornstein from France the other day, and he said that he looked, or what's sort of sparked the sort of passion for painting with him was looking at a painting, seeing a painting, and that was the thing that sparked it for him. So it's interesting that you also say you watched somebody paint, and it must have been also the painting, the idea of the painting that sparked it for you.
Yeah, I think you're right, Petra. Yeah, I think just being able to create something of beauty on just a blank piece of canvas, and just to be able to create something that you think, oh, that's so beautiful. And that really appeals to me, just that, yeah, and being able to invoke those feelings in somebody as well. Yeah, definitely.
Did you have then in school, did you have art lessons, or how did that journey go?
Yeah, when I was at school, I mean, we had, general art class, which
Yeah.
to be honest wasn't up to much.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so through school, not really. I mean, it was pretty stock standard, and they didn't really pay any attention to what you were doing or anything like that. And you didn't have control over what you wanted to do or
Oh, yeah.
anything like that. But I had art lessons when I was about in my mid-20s, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because I've sort of gone in and out of painting. It's funny because you kind of get steered, oh, that's great that you like painting, but you should get a qualification and you should get a job and
Yeah, yeah.
that kind of thing. And
A real job.
yeah, real job. That's it. Yeah, that's it. So my real job to begin with was nursing. I actually started nursing, and once I got through my training, um, yeah, I remember I just saw an advert for this Frenchman. He was teaching about half an hour from my house, just in a little studio at the back of his house, and it was a really small class. There was only about four of us, and that was Wednesday nights, and that used to be the highlight of my week, going to Richard's house on Wednesday night. And honestly, Petra, we'd be there till 2 in the morning talking for Richard.
Really?
But,
Mhm.
yeah, so I sort of had lessons once a week with him, and that was more kind of step by step. He would paint, ABC, so then I would paint ABC. Then he'd do XYZ, I'd do XYZ. And it was kind of teaching that way, which is it's a good way to do it, but the problem is then you're just painting what you see. You're not
Oh, yeah.
really that
Mm.
looseness, that expressiveness, and developing your own style because you're copying what he's doing. But I really loved those ones, and I remember there was another artist who had won a lot of awards for his work, and I really love impressionist painting. I just like the romanticism of it. Anyway, this other guy, he was teaching, and I thought, oh, I'll enroll into his class. And oh God, Petra, it was really disheartening because he would show you. I think some artists, when they teach, I wonder sometimes whether it's more just to supplement income rather than loving teaching, because he would do like
Yeah.
10 steps.
Mm.
And I would remember three of them, and then I'd be stuck, and then he'd tell me off, and it was just really. I just spent the whole class like,
Do it my way or not.
yeah, like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you? I think, oh my God, this is awful.
Yeah. Yeah, but I spoke to an artist in South Africa. He's doing also drawings, and pencil drawings, but it's all very sort of fantasy figures and mystical figures and so on. It's really it's a beautiful work that he does. But he was actually studying art, and he quit studying because people they kept on saying to him it's not real, it's not or relatable or something. And now he's such a successful artist, but because he's doing what he sees and feels and wants to do, and he's exploring this art form and in so many ways. And you think, yes, it's good that I'm not against studying, or I'm not saying anything against it, but I think some people already know what they want and how they want to do it, so they should be left to do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it does stifle that expressiveness and that voice in you, I guess, as well. Because, I mean, you've interviewed a lot of people. I'm sure you've heard people say sometimes it feels like it kind of comes from another place. It sort of comes down into, like, it's downloaded into you, if you like. Sometimes it feels like it's not you doing it. It's almost like something's working through you sometimes. And I think when you're in a class situation, that really gets stifled, and that's kind of the magic as well. I think when you that authenticity and just letting it flow and letting it come out of you, that's when you really do get the magic and the beautiful effect. And yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Actually, now that you're saying that, a singer-songwriter just last year said she feels if it comes from that place in her, that authentic place in her, and if it's something that she really feels, then she knows somebody else will feel it too. And it's like I said to you before, it's also that you can sense that from art. I think that's the beauty of it. You can sense when it's real and when it's authentic, and when this person who did it or who does it really wants to portray this message.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think also when you're creating from that place, not only do you get that wonderful magic, but it's also sustainable because you're not doing art that you kind of forced to do in some respect. And if that becomes successful, then you keep on doing it, and it's kind of slowly killing your soul because it's not really coming from your soul. It's
Exactly.
just what's selling. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that could be a trap. Yeah.
I think that's that thing that you say, that you sort of think, well, will this sell, or will people like it? Then you lose what you want to say.
Yes, yes, and you end up lost, and yeah, it does. I think it slowly kills you once you start going down those roads. Yeah, yeah.
I always ask people this because it's I always wonder about it. But the first painting you sold, or the first paintings you put on exhibition, how did you feel about that? Were you excited or a bit hesitant, or wondered, how it would be received? How confident were you?
Yeah, it's a good question. You realize how personal it is because you kind of, when you're painting, like I paint by myself, I like to just be by myself when I'm painting. So, and then when it's up in front of, when you're at a show or when it is up for sale, and you have to have a bit of a thick skin too, because art is so subjective. One person will look at it and think, oh my God, that's so beautiful, I love that. Another person will look at it and think, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. I can't believe they call that art. So
I'm
there
sure
is.
not with your pieces, really.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, you do have that, how will they be received, sort of thing. Oh, it's interesting as well, what people see in them that I hadn't seen either. So that's always interesting to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's true. And I actually I went to an art exhibition here in Vienna, and the painter, I absolutely love his work, and I asked him to tell me the story about, because I also like when artists tell you what they were thinking about what they were painting. And I was thinking something completely different. And I told him that. And he was actually, he loved that that my interpretation was different to his, to what his intent was. So I'm sure this is for you also, that you love hearing that.
Yeah, I do, and I think you're right. People have described things to me, or talked about what they see, and it actually enriches my experience because I think, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, I really see what you mean, or whatever, and I sort of kind of get a bit out of the painting from their perspective, if you like. Kind of it imbibes into me, and I think, yeah, okay, it makes me kind of look at it in a little bit of a different way, sometimes a better way,
But
as
that
well.
comes back to that when you said it feels like something is downloaded in you. So maybe you also don't have control over, you put it out there, but then everybody receives it differently.
Yeah, yeah. I read the book. I can't remember the girl's name. It's the one that wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love. I've forgotten her name.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, her book, and she's sort of talking about that as well. And, that you kind of, this idea of the universe kind of whizzing around and just looking for an outlet and just seeing who's open to this idea that's whizzing
Yeah.
around. And if you're kind of open, well, you get it kind of thing. And
I love that idea. I love that idea. Yeah, definitely. And then something I really love about your work is the little keys that you put in your paintings.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was just trying to, I just think it kind of adds a bit of fun, but I also think I just like that idea of, in all of us, there's that hidden, if you
Yes.
have the courage to sort of stop and to think and to just really think about how you feel or whatever, or have the courage to go after what you want, that key is there. It's just a matter of whether you've got the courage to grab it and use it, and yeah, so I thought, oh, hide a little key.
I love it. And it makes you also think then, it's somehow, when you look at the painting, then it sort of wants you to open up more to it, to start thinking more. It's almost that key, that door that opens then.
Yes, that's right. And it sort of forces you to look at the painting in detail
Exactly.
rather than just
Yeah.
glance. You're really looking at it. Yeah.
So if you place the keys, do you specifically look, or do you just think where will they fit, or is there a sort of a hidden message also behind hiding the key?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I want to make it a little bit difficult to find. I don't want to be like, oh, yeah,
Okay.
there it is,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
straight away.
Mm.
So it's kind of trying to place it. And because the way I paint in layers. I used to just paint in oil paint, but these days I'm doing mixed media. So it's quite a lot of layers. So I have to be aware that if I'm not careful, I'll bury the key and you'll never find it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It goes
Yeah.
under all the layers and you'll never find it. So I have to sort of think carefully from that perspective as well, that it's still visible. Yeah, rather than sort of, I mean, each painting's different. And I unfortunately came up with the idea after I'd done 3 paintings. So now I have to go back to those paintings and sort of think, how am I going to get this key
Oh,
in?
I see. Okay.
It just needs to
Yeah.
finish. So I'll sort of have a bit of a play around with that. But yeah.
And why this theme? Why were you thinking of that specifically? The opening, the door closing and opening.
Yeah, I think it was a situation where I think I saw a headline and I thought, and it was like it was saying something like that. And I thought, oh, I really like that. And it kind of just that aha moment. And when I started to think about it, and I thought, in my own life, I've had a few instances where something really awful has happened, or at the time it felt really awful and quite upset. And then if you can kind of get past the problem and start looking at, well, okay, well, what are the possible solutions here? And you start to move through it. And once you get to the other end of it, something really good happens that would never have happened if that awful thing hadn't had happened, whether it's a relationship breakdown or whether it's get fired from a job or, whatever it is, that sort of that thing that sets you back a bit. Yeah, and I've seen it with other people too, where, one of my friends, she had two very small children. The second one was only 4 months old. She was engaged to be married, and the fiance came home and said, basically, I don't love you anymore. We're done. And she was really devastated, of course. But then within 18 months, she met the most wonderful man that
Uh,
10,000 times better than the fiance ever was, and all of that kind of thing. And it's that sort of situation again where if
yeah.
he hadn't have done that, she would have still been with him, and they would have kind of just ambled on like they were. And yet now she's with this really amazing man and happier than she's ever been in her life because of that happening. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
just like that idea that, yeah, don't give up. This is not the end of the world. Like something probably is waiting that's far better than you can even imagine at the moment.
Yeah, that's almost like this idea of hope, that in that situation, you can't see anything else, but in hindsight, you see, hey, this was the best thing that could have happened.
Yes, yes.
Mm,
And you're right. It's not until you have hindsight that you
yeah,
realize actually how good that awful thing was in the end. Yeah.
yeah. But florals, you have florals in your work. It's so beautiful, the colors as well. So, what inspires the florals?
Yeah, I've always loved flowers, and I love having fresh flowers in the house, and I love because I've got a big garden, I can just pick them, and I love the symbolism of them as well. And I think it just adds, I don't know, it's just that feminine beauty, I think. And I mean, I always marvel at Mother Nature when you really start to take notice and look closely at, the way how delicate flowers are, but actually how resilient they are, and even the nuances in tones and the way Mother Nature will put certain colors together. And sometimes I think, oh, I would never have thought to put those colors together, and yet it really works. And yeah, so I'm really attracted to flowers. Yeah.
I spoke to a painter once who said that he's actually a painter and a sculptor, and he said that he was made aware of, or somebody told him there has to be movement in work, and the way he found movement was by looking at the sea. And I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand how can you see movement in a painting, or in a sculpture. So, but actually, now that I'm aware of it, I can see it, because how you explain it to me. And I do see it in your work. You can see that flowy, or there is movement in many of your paintings. Is that intentional? Is that something that you are aware of?
Um, Yeah, no, I agree with you. I've seen paintings as well where there's an artist, his name is Giovanni Boldini. He was around in the late 1800s. He was painting all the society women. He was known as the master of swish because back then you can imagine they'd Edwardian gowns and all that kind of stuff. And he always had
Yeah,
swish
yeah.
in them. And when I saw them, I was actually, where was I? I was in Florence,
Mm.
and I saw a couple of his originals. And same thing, when you see paintings that have that movement, I think it's such a skill, and it really brings the piece alive, especially when you can look at the
It
original,
does.
it
Mm.
really comes out at you. And sometimes especially famous paintings, we're so used to looking at the prints, but then when you see the original, and I noticed it, the the National Gallery out here bought the Impressionists out a while ago now, and one of the paintings was of a ballroom scene, and it would have been like 1800s. They've got the amazing skirts and everything. And when I stood in front of that painting, it wasn't very big. It was only sort of this size, but I could actually, the way he had painted it, you could almost see the women swirling. I
Mm.
just think, oh, it's such a
Yeah,
amazing thing to see that in a painting. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But something that I also saw is how you, and your attention to detail on how you package your prints. Do you sell prints, or is that how you package them? You in the rolls, and you put little gloves there, and all the paper, and it's just amazing. It's something that you just want to buy the print just to have that experience of opening this little parcel. I absolutely love your attention to detail on that.
I just sort of think it's so nice. Half the thrill of getting something, I think, is the packaging, don't you think? Like when
Yes,
I look at
absolutely.
really, yeah,
Wow.
definitely. When I look at luxury items, half the thing is the way they're boxed. I think it's so
Mm,
exciting, just the boxing and yeah. So with my prints, a lot of people, I've ordered prints as well from various artists, and they just come in a tube and a bit of tissue paper, and you think,
yeah.
okay, nothing too exciting. But yeah, I just wanted to make the whole experience, whether you're buying a print or an original, that, it's a really beautifully packaged thing. And I just really care about my collectors, and I want them to have I want the whole experience to be, you know, a great experience, not just once they unroll it and, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it makes it also feel precious, that you took so much care in sending it. Then when you receive it that way, I can just imagine that you can feel how precious it is.
Yeah,
So,
I agree, Petra.
so you sell your prints. So how many prints of a painting do you actually sell, or do you print? Do you have limited editions?
Yeah, what I've done is rather than having prints available all the time, I release the series in a 4-day release. So that's the originals as well as prints. So during those 4 days, there's 3 sizes of prints: A3, A2, A1. Generally, they're about 100 prints per size.
Mm.
And then once the 4 days is over, that's it. You can't get the prints ever again. I'll never release them ever again.
Really? Mm.
For the same reason of, really valuing my collectors, and what if you've bought a print, then the only way that would ever come up for sale is if you sold it. It's not like the
Oh,
next
yeah.
time I do a
Mm.
release, oh, you can buy a print of that painting again. You can't. It's
Mm.
once we're done, we're done. Yeah. So it just creates that scarcity and value as well for people that are buying prints.
And I think it's wonderful because it then also, like you say, it just makes it more valuable for the person who has it then also.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I agree that, I sort of have a fair emphasis on that.
So your paintings, when you sell them, is it sort of sad for you to sell because you say you put so much into it? Is it important for you to know who buys it?
Yes, yes. I do feel, you do have paintings where you think, oh, that's my favorite. And when they're sold, you think, oh, I'm never going to see it again.
Oh yeah.
But on the other hand, I think the last thing I want is a house full of paintings that no one sees, or, I've seen people do that where they just can't bear to part with them. And I think, well, then, I don't know, you're painting them for them to just sit in a room in the house somewhere. But yeah, no, so there is that element. But I've also, I really want to know who's buying them as well. And I've chosen to not go with a gallery for that reason, because with a gallery, I'd have no idea who my collectors are or anything like that. Whereas I really want to be able to deal with my collectors personally and, yeah, be able to interact and keep up with them, and, be able to offer them things that I wouldn't be able to do if I was through a gallery or something like that. Yeah, so collectors to me are everything. Yeah.
And can you remember who bought your paintings?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of them keep in touch, or they'll comment on my stories or whatever. So you're kind of messaging backwards and forwards as I release other things or whatever. You keep in touch and all that kind of stuff, and which is really lovely. I
Yes.
really love that. You kind of make
Wow.
friends, and, I've got friends over the world, people that have collected my things, or, if I'm when I was in Dubai, one of the collectors, oh, what are you doing on Monday? And took me all around Dubai and all this kind of thing.
Really?
So
Mhm.
it's so heartwarming to me. It's not just a
Yeah.
transaction of, yeah, there goes the painting, or a gallery saying, oh yeah, we've sold XYZ and okay, that's it. It's a really personal experience, and yeah, you're getting that connection with somebody that's connecting to your work. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you do exhibitions all over the world?
I was, prior to the pandemic, I was doing 4 international shows a year,
Mhm.
self-represented. It's grueling to do
Mm.
it, and it's expensive as well. People think, galleries are flying you all around the world. You're flying all around the world, but they're not paying you.
Mhm.
You're paying for it. But yeah, no, these days, once the pandemic had happened, I sort of burned out, to be honest, and I just stopped. And the pandemic for me was actually good because it was guilt-free time off at the time because we had no choice. We were all in lockdown. But I just, yeah, for me, I just want to have control over my own business and stuff like that. And so now, yeah, now I'm just going online, just doing everything online and just dealing that way, doing that way. And same with the 4-day releases. I find that suits me so much better rather than having to get to a show and hang and this, that, and the other and all that kind of stuff. Whereas now it's just released online, and it's just so much physically easier, I feel. Yeah.
I mean, many artists, I think, had that experience over lockdown to sort of just regroup a little bit, like just thinking, okay, is it worth this, all this? And I think that although it was a sad time, it was also a good time for some people.
Yeah, that's how I found it, Petra. I found it just in 2020 when it first happened. That's when the garden really helped me. I just went outside. It was autumn here. The weather was really mild, and I remember just going outside every day, phone off, away from the television screen, just not listening to any news, and just potter around outside and yeah, and just stop. I think it was nice to be able to do that. Just breathe out for a bit. Yeah.
I remember in lockdown, I did also a series of interviews, and there was a ballet dancer in Birmingham. And she said to me that she was one day just on the balcony of their flat and she was watching a bee. And for a long time, she was just looking at what the bee did. And she was thinking afterwards, never did she have time to do that, just to be there watching a bee. And I always remember that. And I think, yes, I think we all had things that we did that we never had time to do or never thought of doing. But it was that just getting back to basics.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think too, it's almost sort of, I find looking through artist's eyes is what I call it, where you do notice things, and I'm really fortunate because I'm painting full time. I can name my own hours and things like that. But, even without that, I think it's just, yeah, just taking the time to notice what's around you and notice how much beauty is actually all around us all the time. It's
True.
surprising, like you said, she's just on a balcony watching a bee, and you think, yeah, it's such a simple thing, but yeah,
But how wonderful. I always, when I listen to artists speak, and I think, um, how wonderful that you have a way to express what you see, or what you feel. And and it's also so wonderful always hearing the stories and hearing how you see the world. And when I spoke to Alec Borenstein, I asked him also, how do you see the world? So he said, like a painter. So he looks at everything like a painter. So and with you, is it also so when you look at things?
yeah. Yeah, I think it's, when if I go for a walk, I've got a group of shops just up the road from me. So, if I need to send a letter or whatever, or just get milk and bread or whatever, yeah, just kind of looking at the cloud formations or looking at the tones and thinking, oh, how would I paint that? Or,
Really?
um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's true, actually. I've never really thought about it because you're just kind of, that. because it's summer here at the moment, there's trees flowering out the front, and if when the sun hits them in a certain way, and they're almost fluorescent with the sun in a certain way, and you think, oh wow. So yeah, you kind of just learn to see things like that, or think, oh, yeah, how would I paint that? Or yeah, you do. That's true. That is true. Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm in February. I'm going to speak to a neuroscientist, and he actually did research over how architects and painters see the world, and how do they see perspective. So I'm so excited to hear that, because I know all these stories now, and I want to ask him also a few things. But it's interesting that there's actually neuroscience done, experiments done on that, or research done on that. So it's true.
Yeah, that'll be a really interesting interview.
Mhm.
I'll have to look
Yeah,
out for that one now. I'll be
yeah,
interested to watch that when you get that out. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Definitely.
But Johanna, what are the big dream? What is the big dream, or what are the wishes?
Yes, they're pretty big. They're flying in the sky at the moment, but they are pretty big. Um, Probably an artist that I massively admire is an Australian called C.J. Hendry, and
Mm.
she lives in New York, and she is amazing. She draws with pencil, and they are 3D. They're amazing what she does. The detail's incredible. And I look at her and I think, oh, I just would love to be like her. She has her own exhibitions. So she's done things like she'll hire out. Well, she actually found a church in London, this abandoned church that they renovated, and they had an exhibition of her work there. And they had they were paper, but snowflakes just falling from the ceiling for the whole 7 days of the exhibition or whatever. And just does these amazing things. And she's always been self-represented, and she had an exhibition recently. It was called Flower Market, and that was held in New York. It was in collaboration with Claire de Pau, the skincare company. And honestly, Petra, when I saw people were lining up for 3.5 hours in the New York Sun to get into that exhibition, it was incredible. And I think, oh God, I want to do that. I want to do that. So that's kind of the big dream.
I'm sure you're going to do that. I'm
Watch
sure.
this space.
Definitely.
Be
Yeah.
watching for a little while, but we'll get there.
But timing, it'll happen at the right time. I strongly believe that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I also think, that thing of aim for the stars. Even if you hit the moon, you've still hit the moon.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
aim big.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
I have a personal story where I actually wrote a quote in 2017. I read a book, and in the book it said he wrote it's something along the lines of if you believe, the windows of heaven will open and shower you with blessings. And I always, and basically what he wrote about this was saying that you have to put out the wish or the dream or the idea, and then you have to see how it, things happen, and it all falls in place, and it will happen. You don't have to force it. You don't have to go and force the windows open and, you know, sort of grab the blessing. And actually in 2020, I did a photography project here in Vienna, and I photographed 500 artists in their windows. And halfway through my project, I suddenly realized the quote. It was the quote. It was not necessarily the windows of heaven that opened, but it was the windows of Vienna that opened for me, and I could photograph these people. So I always think of that quote, how I could never have seen it in this context, but how this photo project led me to do the interviews and where I'm now, speaking to you. So it was this long sort of path that I had to go on before I could get here. And this is also something that I've never, ever thought I would be doing. So that one little quote make me
Yeah,
now talk to you. So
Yeah.
I strongly believe that exhibition of yours will happen in your way with your magic.
Yeah, and I agree. I've read similar books, and Abraham Hicks is a favorite as well. And they talk about that too, where it's just, yeah, visualizing it and kind of as you were saying, you don't have to force the windows open. Just calm down, let it be.
Yeah.
Imagine
Mm.
it. Imagine yourself as though it's already happened. I think that's really powerful as well, where you're not worrying about how you're going to do it or anything like that. It's just let the universe go to work for you and just get out of the way and just
Mm.
do you do and keep your eyes on that little goal, and yeah, and it's surprising. You're right. It's surprising where things lead you to, and all of a sudden you look back and you think, oh wow, yeah, I can see that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
thread and where it's come from and where I am now because of that. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.